You ever seen a grown woman in a fleece vest get stuffed in the back of a sheriff's cruiser screaming about community property like it's the Declaration of Independence? Yeah, that actually happened in front of my house more than once, if you can believe it. There's a certain look folks get when they realize the cavalry's not coming, and their little HOA power trip just hit a wall, except in this case, the wall was me, my land deed, and one very tired county deputy. Let me back up a sec. Name's Calvin Rohr, software engineer by trade, part-time, mountain hermit by necessity. 3 years ago, I bought a spread up near Cedar Run Hills, tucked way back on a gravel road so rough even the deer have to downshift. My nearest neighbor's mailbox is a mile away, and honestly, that's how I like it. The place had been in the same family since the 40s, long before folks decided every patch of mountain needed a community board and a color palette for porch chairs. I figured I'd bought peace and quiet solitude sky, a place where I could walk outside in sweatpants and not see another soul. But I underestimated the gravitational pull of HOA drama, especially when you're dealing with a woman like Janice Millstone. Picture this windbreaker clipboard eyes scanning for violations like a mall cop with a god complex. She was president of the Cedar Run Hills HOA, and in her mind, everything you could see from a drone camera belonged to her little suburban kingdom. Yeah, she really flew a drone over my ranch, snapping photos like she was working for Google Earth, highlighted printouts, screenshots, the works. She'd annotated a map and marched up to my property line waving a stack of papers at Deputy Halverson, who just blinked at her like he was waiting for the punchline. "Ma'am, this is his land," he said deadpan as you please. Didn't matter. Janice had a Zillow printout and enough attitude to fill the valley. You know what I mean? The poor birds took off every time she raised her voice. The first shot across my bow came when I replaced my sagging old ranch gate with a steel one-keypad entry weatherproof the works. Within 2 days, there's a certified letter from Janice about community obstruction. Apparently, my own gate on my own land was an architectural violation. I laughed it off, thinking maybe she'd figure it out. Nope. Next thing I know, I get a letter about unauthorized solar panels on my barn. My barn, that's 3 miles from the nearest HOA sign. I ignored that too, so she started cutting my locks and letting herself in, mumbling about emergency inspections like she'd just discovered the lost city of El Dorado. And the stories kept coming. She brought a whole landscaping crew up to trim community borders. I had to stand there deed in hand and explain to these poor guys that their job site was 3 miles south and about 1,000 feet lower. Then she tried installing community hiking trails, little wooden signs nailed right onto my cottonwoods, pointing to scenic overlooks that just happened to be my favorite fishing spots. When I asked the crew leader who'd signed his work order, he showed me a printout with her signature and a big shiny HOA seal, probably made on Canva if you ask me. But nothing topped the invoice she sent for easement maintenance, $3,000 for a road that doesn't exist on land she never owned. Her letterhead looked official, I'll give her that. I almost framed it for the guest room. Now, most folks would have given up by then, but Janice doubled down. She called the cops, said I was blocking HOA access to shared amenities. She rallied some neighbors, got them all riled up about exclusive mountain privileges that, spoiler alert, weren't real. When the sheriff showed up, he'd already been through this song and dance. I handed him my deed, a map, and a letter from the Bureau of Land Management. Deputy Halverson looked at Janice and just asked, "Why are you enforcing HOA rules on land that's older than your subdivision?" She sputtered, threatened to call her lawyer, her brother-in-law, who, I later found out, mostly handled tax returns for her friends. That night, after laughing about it with my own lawyer, I posted game cam footage of Janice in action, sneaking around with a ruler, taping violation notices to my trees, taking pictures of my wild grass like she was the HOA botanist. The neighborhood forum blew up. Half the community had no idea she was even involved with my property. Folks started comparing notes, realized they'd been paying trail fees for maintenance on paths that didn't exist. By the end of the week, a group had filed to dissolve the HOA entirely, mismanagement, fraud, you name it. The county started sniffing around Janice's bank records, and wouldn't you know it, over 40 grand collected for mountain improvements, every cent funneled through an account she controlled. She'd been promising playgrounds and gardens on my land using fake maps to drum up support and fees. When I put up a new cattle gate, big steel thing with a sign that read, "Private land, no HOA access. Trespassers will be fed to the bears," she lost her mind. That last part was mostly a joke, though the local black bears seemed to enjoy the attention. Janice came back with a locksmith and a news crew, convinced this was her big civil rights moment. I met her at the gate with Deputy Halverson restraining order in hand, while the reporters realized they'd been tricked into covering a soap opera, not a scandal. Janice threw a fit, yelling about discrimination, community values, the whole 9 yards. Someone leaked the footage, her screaming, "This isn't over," as she got loaded red-faced into the cruiser. 3 counties made it a meme. Folks printed her face on t-shirts, but it's community property, and honestly, I'd have bought one if I didn't think it'd tempt fate. But what started as a punchline ended in a courtroom. Janice got charged trespassing harassment fraud. The fraud was the big one, since she'd collected real money for imaginary amenities. 15 homeowners sued for their money back plus interest. In court, her whole defense unraveled when the DA showed emails where she'd plotted with her brother-in-law to legitimize the HOA's reach. Jury didn't need long, verdict was in before lunch. The civil case was brutal. 75 grand in damages, Janice personally on the hook. When the judge read the amount, her husband stood up and walked out, pale as a ghost, probably wondering if he'd get to keep his golf clubs. The cherry on top. The state picked up the case for wire fraud. She'd transferred those fees electronically, which kicked it up to the feds. The prosecutor, a stone-faced lady who'd clearly had her fill of HOA tyrants, asked for 18 months of federal time. The judge agreed, handing down a sentence with fines, restitution, and 200 hours of community service, ironically all at a public park Janice once tried to regulate. Her real estate license gone for good. The final shot. Janice hollering, "You can't do this to me. I'm the HOA president," as the bailiff cuffed her fleece vest, snagging on the table, face red as a summer tomato. The courtroom was dead silent except for me quietly humming "Battle Hymn of the Republic" under my breath. So yeah, that's how my quiet life in the mountains turned into a full-blown legal drama with memes, lawsuits, and more drone footage than a Discovery Channel special. You ever wonder why folks hate HOAs? Sometimes it just takes one Janice to ruin it for everyone. But here's my question. Where do you draw the line between community rules and flat-out abuse of power? Have you ever stood your ground against someone like that, or maybe had your own run-in with an overzealous community leader? Drop your stories below, because if there's one thing I've learned out here, it's that everyone's got a little battle of their own. And hey, if you believe in justice or you've got a wild HOA tale of your own, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching, from what you'd have done in my boots, or if you've ever had to stand up to the Janices of the world. The more we talk, the better chance we have of making sure the next fence, the next trail, and the next story belongs to the folks who really care about home.